Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Coming at you live from Brooklyn. This is your daily spiritual check-in from the Bhakti Center. My name is Dal Gurunga, and I'm with Kishore Chandra. And this is Spirit Matters. How are we doing today, Kishore? Tell me what's up. You look good. You look fresh.
I'm
You just yawn and rubbed your eyes, so there's like a little bit of puffiness. But like overall, the sun's shining in your room. Your skin looks good. The blue shirt. Blue is the color of you. Poem that you wrote. You got a good mug. You're looking good. You're looking
I'm
fresh.
I'm glad I look good. I'm glad I do because I'm feeling not so fresh, but if I
Hmm.
look fresh, then
How you feeling?
maybe it will come. I don't know. You know those days where you just wake up and you make the mistake of checking your phone the first thing?
You mean
So
like the habit I've developed every day of my life?
I usually have my phone on straight up do not disturb. And then yesterday someone asked me, a friend, why is your phone always on do not disturb? And I was like, okay, fine, I'll change it. And then I changed it. And then this morning I like peeked out of the corner of my eye and I saw like 20 million notifications and I checked it. It was a bad idea. Going
I
back
don't
to
have
the
notifications on my phone.
neither do I. I'm on just do not disturb constantly at all times.
Well, it's not do not disturb. I just don't have notifications. No screen banners, no sounds.
I
But I
don't have
do.
notifications.
I don't need them because I still just check it constantly.
I don't have notifications, but I turned them on for WhatsApp because I was like, well, like maybe something important. My mind always goes to like the worst place possible. I'm just like, if this person, like I'm thinking about like family members falling or like getting hurt. I'm just like, and if they WhatsApp me and then if I miss it. So I
Mm.
turned them on for that crazy reason. But maybe
So what was there?
just stuff, just stuff that was not pleasant at 8 in the morning.
Mm.
But I'm here and
If
I'm happy to be here because
if you're
I
listening and you sent Kishore that message,
woke
just know that you ruined his day. Thank you so much.
How are you,
Um,
DG?
I'm doing okay. I've been checking updates, and I mentioned this last night Tuesday night Kirtan. I've been following up with this American football player, Damar Hamlin, who Monday night on national television. It was on ESPN and ABC, the national television, primetime evening. American football player. I have to say American because we just had the World Cup, um, and so we know which one I'm talking about. Um, Made a hit and made a tackle and went into cardiac arrest and like he had to be resuscitated twice. Had to be resuscitated on the field and then at the hospital, and he's hooked up to a ventilator and breathing, and there's been no updates, but like he just almost and potentially still may die. And it just like brought the sport world to a halt. And 24 years old, second year in the league, grown men just crying on the field. It's like if you look at the footage of that game and like these players, you ever see like before, especially before like a football game, like all sports are intense, but like football they get like super jacked up and they're jumping up and down and we're going to go to war and we're going to like we're going to crush them, etc. Like these hyped up super machismo, like just like overdose of masculine energy, and then they're just like bawling and weeping and like bewildered, and they paused the whole game and canceled everything. They still haven't rescheduled. And so like when I'm on my phone, every time I'm checking like where he's at, and it's been 36 hours and they still don't got nothing. So
That's crazy.
it's just the world going on. And and it's wild. I think of there's this statistic that I hesitate to quote often because it's from Stalin. What's his
Mm,
first name? Joseph?
mhm.
Joseph Stalin, like the tyrant, dictator, like
Yeah.
murderer, Joseph
Yes.
Stalin. Um, he said that the death of one person is a tragedy,
Mm,
and the death of a million people is is a statistic. And
mm,
so, as this young man was, it's like we hear about death all the time, and we hear about tragedy all the time. And I just saw somebody post something. about like, imagine, put into perspective, let's say you're born in 1900 and like all the wars and the tragedy and the flu epidemic and people, that 5 million people died in this war and 10 million people died in that. And it's just like, it becomes like hard to process. And you just think, oh, like, yeah, 10 million, one, 200,000 people died in an earthquake. Wow, that's really crazy. But then if
Mm,
like one person that or that you see or that you witness or that is observed on national television, or your brother, it's almost like the world comes to a stop. One of my favorite Coldplay songs was off their Head Full of Dreams album. It's called Everglow. Um,
mm,
Everglow lyrics, and God, I'm gonna look it up right now. It's this thing that says, how come things move on? How come cars don't slow when it feels like the end of my world?
mm,
Like, why does it the world? Because if it's not directly related to us, it's like we just kind of move on. But when it comes into our world, everything just kind of stops. And so I was thinking about that, how like
mm,
um the whole like sport world just came to a close because of this one person. But at the same time, you know, last night with Tuesday Night Kirtan, I was telling the story, and I was talking about how you live in New York and like ambulance sirens are just part of the background of the everyday life. And every time there's a siren, there's somebody fighting for their life. There's somebody experiencing tragedy. Someone's going through a traumatic event. Someone is on the verge of losing a loved one. And we just kind of like pause, wait for it to pass, and then continue our conversation. And then
mm.
even then, I led the kirtan, and then at the end of the kirtan, we got the silent, like a siren. Just, I think you were out. You were out getting like the cake or something. But when I ended the kirtan, it was just like a siren, ambulance siren was just on cue.
Mm.
So that's my phone update. That's what I looked at when I woke up. Didn't have any WhatsApp messages from family members that had fallen. My
Good.
sister got home from the hospital.
Oh, yay, that's really good.
My sister was in the hospital for like 5 weeks. Two
Wow.
of them were in basically a coma. I don't think they didn't diagnose or categorize that as a coma, but she was eyes closed, um, not not conscious for like 2 weeks.
Mm.
And
I'm glad that she's
she
back.
got home. There's like a picture my mom sent me of like her hugging her 10-year-old son, and they're crying.
Mm,
And it's just everywhere. It's just everywhere. People are going through it. Achuta's not able to be with us because she said some emergency came up somewhere and she's got to be out of town. We don't know where you are. We love you, Achuta. Thinking about you and wherever you are with your loved ones. It's just everywhere.
mm,
Just everywhere.
mm.
And so it feels to me, and I don't know. Um, before we started here, we asked Kimberly to pull up the notes from yesterday. We're like, we're gonna pick up where we left off yesterday. And Kishore's gonna talk about manifest destiny. Now we're like in complete tangent mode. Um,
Let's do it.
but Kishore's good for a good tangent. But I was just thinking like it feels to me, and I don't know, like the end of 2022 was like this big like
Mhm,
felt like this big purging going on. And forgive the trigger word if that's a trigger word for anybody, but like just like this intense concentrated like suffering going on with people getting
mhm,
sick and people in the hospital. And like, a friend of ours, like her father was in the hospital with
mhm,
like brain in the fluid. Like Ananya's father had a heart attack. Did you know that?
mhm.
Pretty near my
Cardiac stop. Apparently,
heart.
Nima
Yeah.
explained all the differences of everything to me. It was called a heart stop or something like that.
Heart stop. Well, cardiac arrest is when your heart stops, and
No, right, different.
cardiofibrillous. So something. There was something else.
He like stopped me in the hall and he like explained all three different things to me. A heart attack is the lowest one. Then heart failure. That's what he had. He had heart failure. Then heart
Ugh.
failure is the next. Then cardiac arrest is the worst.
Which one did he have?
Heart failure.
Middle.
Mhm.
Yeah, this guy in the NFL, he had cardiac arrest.
That's like super bad. That's where they have to like, that's where like you're probably gonna die.
Yeah, that's what it was. And it was like there was just these giant grown men's like big white dudes with bald heads and beards that look like
Mhm.
Vikings are dying. And like you know, and like like all kinds of people just like crying.
Mhm.
Isn't like, oh my God, like what are we looking at? And
I
so
think I think it's an interesting point. I like this tangent. I think it's an interesting point about life in general, because I also felt that there's like kind of been this purging at the end of 2022 and still kind of lingering on in these first days. And I was just thinking about, since we were talking about ambulances and, you know, people going through it and stuff, it's always so sweet when His Holiness Radhanath Swami is here, because every time he's giving a lecture or like something's going on and an ambulance goes by, which is often in New York City,
every
he'll
time
like,
he speaks.
yeah, like he'll like consciously stop and acknowledge it and acknowledge the suffering, acknowledge that like someone is suffering there, to make a prayer for that person. And it's really special actually, because we can become so desensitized to these things, because like you were saying, Dayal, it's like if we don't really know the person, then it doesn't phase us so much. And so we become out of tune with other people's suffering in a sense, or other people's suffering becomes a little bit like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like statistical, or it becomes a little bit like, you know, amorphous, or not really for us able to have empathy for. And this came up because you were talking about this NFL player, but I read something, since we're talking about death and stuff, I read something that was like really like, God, you know, I've been getting back into like my radical politics, which I feel really good about.
Okay, I'm glad you feel good about it.
Yeah. And I was
Because
just,
you've been in places where you're very jaded. I'm just like, there's a political revolution going on, and you're like, yeah, right.
no, no, no.
None of it's gonna work out.
No, so I read something that was like really like, oof. So apparently over the holidays, in one of like Amazon's warehouses, one of their oldest workers in the warehouse, he was like 90 or something like that, died. Like he like died on the job. And they, I guess like the upper management, while they were waiting for like the ambulances to come or whatever, which was taking a long time because it was like the holidays or whatnot, they stacked up boxes around him so that the other workers wouldn't have to see the dead body, so that they could then continue back going to work as if nothing had happened and they wouldn't be disturbed by the sight.
Mm.
And it just really, and that's what happened. The other workers went back to work, and it just really, 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 when I read that, I was just like, wow, this is really like, something is like really wrong with this world, you know, something is like really, really wrong. And that's like a very intense example, but you know, we have those lived examples every day when there is someone suffering, whether it be on an ambulance, whether it be on the street, whether it be, you know, kind of a global situation going on. And our level of empathy seems to have been, I don't know if co-opted is the right word, but it seems to have been kind of like usurped by our, I don't know, our attention is being drawn elsewhere. You know, I guess it's being usurped by whatever is taking our attention, because our attention is being taken to, I have to do this and I have to do that, and I have to make sure that I'm okay, and I have to make sure that I have enough things, and I have to do this and I have to do etc. Wow, Baldevi, that's a beautiful statement. Empathy has been eroded by others around us. And I actually really like that, Baldevi, because I do think that when others are empathetic around us, or others are really practicing compassion, and we've talked about compassion a lot in Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna kind of at the top of the chapter, end of chapter, beginning of chapter 2, is speaking about kind of this like material compassion. Srila Prabhupada, he denotes it as material compassion that Arjuna is having. And so it's really important, I think, to be in the association of spiritually minded people who are helping us awaken our empathy and our compassion, first of all, like that's first and foremost, but then also helping us have a direction towards that, for that empathy and compassion, so that it's not misdirected, like Arjuna's material compassion was misdirected. But yeah, it's like, I think that's why sometimes I get jaded, because it's like you hear about like famous people, or you hear about this or you hear about that, and everyone's mourning over this, but it's just like, well, what about the like 90-year-old worker at the Amazon warehouse, or like what about like all these people that are you know like suffering, and so I don't know, I'll end my rant there, but that's
Yeah,
kind of
well,
what's in my mind.
well, that was sort of the thing about the NFL player that was it was so unprecedented and unique about it, is that it was just on national television, in a prime time national TV. And there was even this at a certain point, it was like, okay, because injuries happen, they come on, they cart somebody off the field. It took like half an hour of like this person on the field, and they tried to get him into a stretcher, and then he went into cardiac arrest, and then they had to resuscitate him. And then it's like they finally got him in the ambulance, and there was just this huddle of players around there, and cameras couldn't get in, nobody knew what was going on. And he finally like was taking the ambulance off the field, and there was this like cold quiet on the field. And then it was like they announced like, okay, like 5 minutes to kind of warm up and get back into it, and then we're going to resume the game.
Mm,
And it was like a really in the world of sports, it was like a really big game. It was like had a lot of importance and stakes and the timelines of it, etc. And then like the coaches just met, and like you can see them talk, what they're saying, they give a hug, and then like the players just all just like funneled off of the field back into the tunnel into the locker rooms. And it was like, this game is temporarily suspended, like to regroup. And then they just like completely postponed the game and didn't come back on the field. And it was just like, we cannot, it was almost kind of like there was this dictation, like they tried to like put the boxes around the body and like everybody just go back to work. But
mm,
it was just like, we cannot and we will not. And then it was just like, you know, um, it was just like, because it was televised in real time, you were just seeing it in real time play out. And the one thing that was going on over and over and over, and the announcers just like, we don't know how to respond to this, we don't know what to
mm,
say, we've never experienced anything like this before, we're not sure. It wasn't like after the fact interviews process, it was just like in real time.
mm.
And I think that that's what made it so unique. You were just seeing it.
Yeah. And I think something super interesting about all of this is that, like, Bhagavad Gita is talking about these kind of tough topics.
Mhm.
Bhagavad Gita is talking about death. Bhagavad Gita is talking about, this huge decision that Arjuna has to make on the battlefield, as to whether to fight or not fight. Krishna is talking about action and these darker things like anger and lust and envy and selfishness and self-involvement and all of this stuff. So all of these things are being addressed here in Bhagavad Gita. But I think when something like the sports player situation, or the Amazon worker situation, I think what feels senseless, or what kind of stops people in their tracks of like, whoa, like what's happening here, a lot of it has to do with when there are those intense moments of some sort of injury or death or etc. It kind of like whittles down, or at least my feeling is it whittles down to like this question of like, why, why is this happening, what does this mean, like what's the deeper purport of this situation, or where is my faith in this situation, how does this fit into the bigger picture. And I think because so many of us in general in society have become kind of very stratified, and there's so many extremes and polarities, and I'm on this side, no, you're on that side, I believe this, no, you believe this, there's not much like holding us together, there's not like this like common humanity holding us together, because even that humaneness, Baldevi is talking about humanity not being humane enough, which I really like. This so-called humaneness isn't even there so much anymore, because we have these examples of the NFL player, we have these examples of the 92-year-old Amazon worker as such. So I think I guess what I'm trying to say is, it would be, even though it's a very difficult situation, injury, suffering, pain, death, all of these kinds of things, with Krishna, with a a deep faith, with a bigger understanding of how it all fits together, it softens the blow a little bit, and it makes more sense somehow in the grander scheme of things. And it doesn't seem so purposeless, because the meaning is attached to something eternal and real and beautiful. Whereas sometimes when we look at senseless, killings going on, and coups d'etats and revolutions and government breakdowns and like sports televised nationally, it feels very senseless, because it always whittles down to like, wait, why are we doing this again? Like, for our own entertainment, like, why are we doing this again? So I can get a package delivered in one day? Like, why is this happening again? And it always whittles down to like a very nonsensical answer. It's just like, wow, this is really messed up, like, this is not good. Whereas if we were all centering our life around our spirituality, around Krishna, it would all whittle down to like, oh yeah, that's right. Like, this is part of my deeper faith. This is part of my deeper relationship with Krishna. This is a place for me to commune with my higher power, with the teachings. And it actually, those moments of suffering in a spiritual context can bring you actually deeper and closer into a relationship with Krishna. In a material understanding, or in a material context, those moments of suffering will just make you realize how senseless the material world is, and it'll help you realize like how much of it doesn't make sense. Material world doesn't make sense. That's what I got today.
It makes no sense.
Material
Material
makes no sense.
makes no sense. Yeah, thank you. That was our daily tangent. Now moving on to Manifest Destiny.
Oh God.
We've got just a couple minutes left, actually. We're about ready to wrap it up. Do we want to is there something anywhere from the Gita that we want to speak to what we're sharing? Is there a verse that comes to mind, or a section, or
Well, yes. I was slowly making the connection here, and I'm gonna throw in Manifest Destiny in there too.
We're gonna get it all in there.
I'm gonna get it all in there just to not leave everyone hanging. But these next two verses, in order that we've been reading, are 31 and 32. And Krishna, for now, has been talking about this idea of working with devotion in the heart, or acting with devotion for him, for Krishna. And so these next two verses are kind of instructive, where Krishna is saying, those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions, and who follow this teaching faithfully without envy, become free from the bondage of fruitive actions. And he continues to say, but those who out of envy disregard these teachings and do not follow them regularly are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled and ruined in their endeavors for perfection. And so I really like these two verses, because it's essentially Krishna saying like, here, I've given you the magic equation of understanding the difference between work and devotion, between karma and karma yoga. And now he's like letting us know, it's like, hey, if you act in this way, if you act in a way that has devotion in your heart, that you're not attached to the results of the actions, then you'll actually make some progress, right, in your spiritual endeavors. But if not, you're going to remain in this dark place of ignorance. And I guess this ties in, this instruction, because a lot of the times I think in life, we've been talking about this crazy tangent about compassionlessness and kind of the inhumanity of our current situation sometimes in this society. And a good litmus test is to just really go back to the Bhagavad Gita and be like, okay, here are the principles. How am I doing against these principles? Like, how are these principles fitting into my life? And more often than not, in my life, at least personally, I am able to go back and be like, yep, I wasn't really doing that. I wasn't really believing that. I wasn't really, you know, doing this with devotion in my heart. I actually wanted the outcome, and I was actually like lusting after the outcome, you know? And so Krishna's not only giving us the formula, but he's reminding us like this clarion call of like, hey, you know, if if you guys are able to do this, which is really simple, it's a really simple thing. Later in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says about bhakti and devotion, he says, if you offer me with devotion, just one flower, one leaf, one water, like I'll accept it, you know? So it's really this matter of intention in my heart. If I'm able to connect back to source or back to Krishna. And so I think I promised I was going to throw in manifest destiny in there. But I guess the one thing,
You don't have to. We can do that tomorrow.
no, because then it's gonna linger. I guess the one thing about manifest destiny is just the intentionality behind things. Because for those of you that don't know about manifest destiny, it's just this idea that like the Americas or Americans, whatever, quote unquote, we're destined to conquer all of the North American continent. And so the intention behind it led people to this kind of space. And what Krishna has been speaking about in these passages is give up all sense of proprietorship. You know, like I am actually that ultimate proprietor, and you're meant to have a relationship with me, not to become like the owners of the land. And so I guess I'm walking away with that, or I'll end my rant with that really this intention is super important, and Krishna kinds of gives us the checks and balance system to check on ourselves, to check where that intention is.
Mm, thank you. And I think creating that space for ourselves, part of what I was thinking about as we were sharing in relation to sort of like the overwhelmingness of the suffering of the world,
Mm,
is that, we're not necessarily meant to be exposed to everything that we're exposed to. I'm not supposed to be aware of an earthquake happening on the other side of the globe. I'm not supposed to be aware of all the things that I see on the news outside of like a 5 mile radius. Like, I mean, we are now, we live in a global economy, live in a global market, we live in a global society. Like, yes, it's value, but I think that when we look at what we're built for as humans, there is we're much more built to be, you know, we're meant to live in smaller circles.
mhm,
We're meant to live in smaller circles. And we've sacrificed that smaller circle for we sacrifice the depth and intimacy of a smaller circle for the breadth of just like mass appeal. And we're experiencing consequences of that, where it just becomes like overwhelming. And I think that it's helpful for us to let that go and learn to realize that it's not our job to respond to everything. Um, that's a whole other spiritual topic in terms of the role that God plays in other people's lives and
mm,
the one I don't.
mm.
But we're going to turn to Kimberly now. Kimberly is the one who wraps us up and gives us some takeaways to see if anything we said made sense. What do you got for us, Kimberly?
Thank you. Earlier, I liked Leela Manjari's comment. She said that Krishna is waking up and checking his phone to see how we're doing every morning. And
Mm,
taking away that we can follow Radhanath Swami's example by consciously pausing and acknowledging other people's experiences and suffering. And sometimes the material world seems like it doesn't make any sense, but we can see how situations fit into the bigger picture. And another takeaway, Kishore said that it's about the intention in the heart. Thank you.
thank you. You got a takeaway word, Kishore?
Um, just that the material world doesn't make sense, but it also makes sense at the same time. That's
There you go,
my
everybody.
enigmatic takeaway.
All right, take that into your day. I am pulling away with gratitude, or the reminder to take advantage of the gifts that have been given to me, because they are plenty. The fact that we're here, the fact that we have opportunity, the fact that we have spiritual tools given to us to navigate these complex things. I was oh, it's going to go into a whole nother story. I'll get into it yesterday. Remind me of the podcast story that Dial heard the day before tomorrow. But yeah, just the reminder for myself to, it's worth it. My spiritual life is worth it. And I'm a person that can sometimes suffer from a lot of extreme self-neglect. And it's probably embedded in like deep childhood issues of thinking that I'm not like worthy of love and happiness, and and all the things that we tell ourselves, like these deep forms of self-neglect. And but I feel for myself that it's a reminder that like our spiritual lives are worth it. We are worth it, to invest in ourselves, and to yeah, that's it. We're worth it. You're worth it. You are worth it. One of the phrases they would end 12-step meetings, Al and I say, is it works if you work it, so work it. You are worth it. That's my takeaway. All right, guys, be well, take care. We love you, and we will see you all next time. Same time, same place. Bye-bye.